Good afternoon, Year 6. In today's science lesson, we are going to be exploring the two scientists, Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel. Let me share the can. I'm just going to move my face. So can I make links between scientists' findings and how we understand our world today? So if we're making links, we're looking for similarities and differences. And it also requires us to be able to be resourceful and reflect back on what we've read and understood about the two scientists and what their findings were, their discoveries, and piecing together those similarities and differences, and thinking how did their findings, their scientific studies, affect us in our world today? Without them, where would we be? So our inquiry question, what we're going to be delving into and looking at more, is how do scientists know that animals and humans have changed over time? How did they find that out? We are going to seek our answers through using the schema of research and using secondary sources. So you guys will have all seen this double bubble map before. We looked at it when we were in history comparing the International Space Stations. If you can't print this, do not panic. You can just draw it out, draw the bubbles, not a problem. If you can print, great. Either way, doesn't affect us. As long as we see your findings, that's all that matters. So here we've got Alfred Russel. So you will write about him in this section and Charles Darwin in this section. In the centre, in the blue, you will write what they both have in common with each other. And on the outside red bubbles, you will write about all the differences between them. So you might want to comment on their work, on their scientific findings. Perhaps you want to comment on their personal lives or their upbringing, or maybe you want to talk about their experiences that they've had in the world. Any of those things you can put in this double bubble map. But first, we need to find out a little bit more about these scientists so that you have lots of information to fill in. I'm just going to do a really brief overview, and then we've given you all of the links so that you can complete your own research through the secondary sources. But first off, who was Alfred Russel Wallace? We don't really hear so much about him. We hear so much about Charles Darwin. So he was a British citizen. He was a naturalist and explorer. And some of you may remember from year 5 that he was actually somebody that took a lot of time exploring the Amazon. And he really delved into the rainforest and did lots of his research in Brazil. So he was made famous for jointly publishing his ideas of evolution through natural selection with Charles Darwin. So that's what he was made famous for. He had a lot of the same and very similar ideas and ideologies as Charles Darwin, but he doesn't get so much of the credit. So today it would be really nice for you to kind of learn more about him and what he had found. So Charles Darwin, he died in 1882. So now, even 100 years later, people still talk about his ideas. And when we talk about evolution, often people, their first scientist that they think of is the explorer Charles Darwin. But today, hopefully, we're going to try and break down those boundaries and help you realise that it was more than just him who had these ideas. But nevertheless, I suppose he was famous for creating the book, The Origins of Species. And he had the idea of evolution in that over millions of years, living things would started to gradually, very slowly over a long period of time, change. And that's what you kind of looked at in your last lesson. So you'll find more information on the links in your assignment on each of those individuals. And there's a really interesting BBC article that we've also linked on for you, which is brilliant. It goes into a lot more detail, and I just did the control find tool to find out where they were talking about Wallace. So I read everything through, and then I wanted to go back and just find and really look at the bit where they worked together. So I'll read it to you. So this is 1858. After Russel Wallace was an admirer of Darwin's, he was inspired and set off travelling. And Darwin realised that if he didn't go public quickly with his ideas, then Wallace might steal and take credit for all of the new ideas. But Darwin realised that Wallace was abroad and uncontactable. He was out on his expeditions and exploring. So Darwin was left with a moral quandary, which basically means he was trying to decide what's the right thing to do, what's the good choice, the best choice to make. Should I take the credit, or should I wait and treat Wallace fairly and equally? And he chose, Charles Darwin, to wait for Wallace to come back from his expedition and to collaborate together. And I wonder, when you read this article further back, or further towards the beginning, we realise and we learn that Charles Darwin's family were very affluent, they were very well off, and key figures in the community. But we do learn that his grandfather, who was also a scientist, spoke out to the community about his ideas and his theories, which actually contradicted the Christian worldview. And the Christian worldview was very prominent back then, and people weren't open to learning about new ideas as such. So his grandfather was ostracized, which means he was kind of blocked out of the community. And we learn that Charles Darwin he was afraid of this happening to him as well. So anyway, moral quandary, or was he thinking, will I be ostracized too? Who knows? I think we will never find out the truth. But in 1858, we realise that Darwin and Wallace come together and they rewrite the theory of evolution. The very sad thing is that on the day where they were meant to be having a meeting to present their ideas together, a private tragedy had happened in Darwin's life, and he lost his 18-year-old son, who died of scarlet fever, and he was only 18 months old. So a very tragic ending to a very bright and positive collaboration of ideas. So yes, now it's over to you to do your research and to fill out your double bubble map. And we really look forward to looking at your findings. So yeah, enjoy.